ABC News correspondent from New York. How safe are our runways?
You know, probably safer than you might imagine after you hear the story about a 22-year-old kid who jumped the fence at the Orlando Melbourne airport down there in Melbourne, and around 2 a.m. yesterday morning, and got on board an American Airlines Airbus A321. Wow. That's a jetliner, and the aircraft was parked in a maintenance area. It was being worked on. Some guys who were actually working on the airplane spotted this 22-year-old fellow, Nishal Shankar, and tried to tackle him. He kind of got away. They chased him, and they caught him, and now he's in jail. He'll go to court for his first appearance about 1:15 this afternoon.
But that follows right on the heels of that crazy story up in the Northwest of the, I guess, a baggage handler or
Richard
a technician,
Russell, yeah.
Who took over an airplane and then took it for a joy flight.
Yeah, and actually did some pretty complicated, pretty daring aerobatics.
Oh, yeah.
In the process, yeah. Yeah, and so that really does speak to the question of, are the airports secure? Is the flight line secure? In both cases, these guys were able to get onto airplanes they shouldn't have been on. In one case, it was kind of an insider job because this guy was an employee of Alaska Airlines, and he was on the line, and he did have a lot of interaction with the aircraft themselves. This other guy, he had a commercial pilot's rating. Basically, he was a flight student. So what that means is he probably could fly a single or a twin-engine piston aircraft, and no indication that he had any ability to even start the Airbus A321. But I tell you this, the availability of flight simulators out there makes it kind of amazing what you can and can't do, even if you've never been in the cockpit.
Well, it seems to me, and I may be wrong, but don't you have to have the keys to the thing? I mean, do they just leave it in the dashboard?
Well, it's not like your car.
Oh,
there
okay.
are no really, I mean, some private aircraft, the single and twin engine aircraft, they have keys. But a plane like that is not going to have keys. But it takes a lot to be able to start one. You can't just jump in the seat and, push a button and off you go. It does take a procedure. And if you know that procedure, well, then that's something very different.
I think the scary thing also is how they are able to get as far as they get on the runway. Because in this latest case, I mean, they did ask for his ID, and at least someone did ask that when he got to the plane, right?
Yeah, that's it. And I got to tell you, even a bigger airport like that, it's a pretty small community. Most people know each other, and somebody who doesn't belong there really does stand out. So we had this issue in Atlanta, where I'm from, not long ago, where a guy jumped the fence. Apparently, it tolerated a lot of pain to do that, going over the razor wire.
Ooh.
Got over the fence, ran right up to some aircraft on the taxiway and did a striptease. So, there are people who can, if they're very determined, get through the security layers. The idea, according to airport officials, is lots of layers, and the last one being humans. I mean, they're the people who ultimately see something, say something.
Now, as you look at an airport, and I know what we go through, we have to take off our shoes and our belts and darn near our pants and coats, and yet when you look around an airport, it doesn't seem that tough to get into the airport itself if you try from the outside. Now, granted, you're going to be spotted, but somebody trying to do it in the dark of night, it seems they could make it through pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, again, going back to the world's busiest airport, Atlanta, because I just went to a briefing on this at Hartsfield-Jackson International, where they were talking about they've beefed up the fence. Now there's a Jersey barrier at the bottom of the fence. The fence is 8 feet tall above that, and there's not just barbed wire, but there's concertina wire up there to really deter anybody. And they're talking about putting in sensors behind the fence, whether they're cameras or some other kind of motion sensors. That's the kind of thing you might be seeing in the future. At some point, it's all going to come down to people, though. People who are watching the cameras, people who are listening for the alarms, and people who are out there patrolling the fence who can stop somebody faster than apparently it happened in Atlanta when the guy got right up to an airplane.
And at the end of the day, as you said, it comes down to the people, and I'm always curious about that as I watch people come through security and they flash their badge, and I think, what kind of background check, what kind of investigation have they gone through to kind of just flash their badge and head back to where I've got to strip down to, my skivvies and socks to get into?
Well, there is a known crew entry point. Whether it's flight line personnel, baggage handlers, pilots, flight attendants, they're all going to go through there because they do have a badge that they had to earn through a background check. And there is a pretty stringent, in general, a pretty stringent procedure for checking these people.
Well, you hope so, because at the end of the day, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And if these days it seems like the threat is coming from inside and not outside. Yeah,
the idea that somebody can actually get into the airport perimeter and then get onto an airplane is really disturbing. And I'm sure, McGraw, that there are going to be a number of security reviews, not just at this airport in Melbourne, Florida, but all over the country. That's already happened once with the guy in Seattle, and I'm sure it's going to happen again.
Yeah. Pete Combs, ABC News correspondent from New York. Thank you very much.